Local author Marie Prue-Meter has come out with a new book about growing up French here in Western Massachusetts. Steve Piltonic sat down with the Chicopee native to talk about what inspired her to write about the French-Canadian experience in New England.
Marie Prue-Meter has always been proud of her French heritage. She served as the director of the French Heritage Center for 5 years and was a contributor to the 2015 book, Building a Better Life, The French Canadians in Western Massachusetts. The author of Many Faces, One Mary, featuring area gardens and shrines to Our Lady, Prue-Meter's lifelong passion for French history and culture inspired her to pen her latest book, Growing Up French, a collection of Franco-American interviews.
My main goal was, to preserve the past for future generations, because I felt like, we were losing our heritage. And so also I wanted to provide insight into what it was like growing up French.
Between 1840 and 1930, 1.5 million French Canadians emigrated to New England and neighboring states, many to work in the textile mills of Chicopee and Holyoke. Growing up in Chicopee, French traditions were passed on to Marie and her 2 siblings at an early age.
When my parents would get together with relatives, they spoke French. My father and mother were always singing French songs in the house. My father would read the French newspaper. My mother, she had a ton of French expressions, like she'd say, asseyez-vous, which means sit down. Or she'd say, bonne nuit every night, good night.
Marie's family were parishioners of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary Parish in Chicopee. Marie also attended Assumption School just across the street. Both were places where French-Canadian heritage was practiced and maintained.
After the Mass, people had Réveillon, which they would have a big meal after the midnight Mass. They would have meat pie suppers and with pea soup. And another tradition around the holidays or Christmas was making fudge. My father used to make delicious chocolate fudge.
The book cover features a 1931 Assumption Dramatic and Musical Circle group, which included members of her own family.
They traveled around doing French plays. From what I gathered, they were pretty elaborate. And, my mother's in here. She's very small. She looks like she's about 7 or 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And then my meme, her mother, was up here.
During its 5-year existence, many authentic French events and lectures were held in the Assumption Church Hall. Here, Marie met individuals with rich French heritages from across New England. Their stories served as the inspiration for the book.
I saw how passionate they were about their heritage. And I would talk to them and they'd tell me about, they were researching their genealogy. Other people told me fascinating personal experiences that they had had.
From 2013 to 2018, Prue-Meter interviewed 23 Franco-Americans, some local and others from across New England, who told stories of courage, history, and culture. She recorded the interviews but didn't transcribe them until the pandemic in 2020, long after Chicopee's 3 French Catholic churches closed, including her beloved Assumption in 2009.
I tried to keep the stories as accurate as I could as to what the people told me. I added in lots of historical information.
In writing the book, Prue-Meter learned a lot about many French-Canadian contributions and accomplishments. Those interviewed came from all walks of life, including the building trades which the French became known for. Marie's father was a painter and carpenter.
For me, they were very educational and inspiring. So, one woman's ancestor traveled with the French missionary, converting the Hurons in Quebec. Another woman was involved with a bill in Connecticut to establish French Canadian Day. One woman traveled to St. Anne de Beaupré Church in Quebec for 25 years to help there with the handicapped people. And then another woman, her grandfather was a carpenter. He built 36 churches in Quebec. So that's pretty impressive too. So there was a mother and an aunt who made a living as seamstresses. Well, they were making wedding gowns with the Skinner silk. So the Skinner silk is from the Skinner Silk Mill in Holyoke.
When Marie cleaned her mother's wedding gown, an employee noticed a small tag on the back of the dress.
Well, my eyes popped open. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, did you say Skinner? So here it was, and I never knew. The material from my mother's wedding dress was from the Holyoke Skinner Mills, and I just thought that was so amazing.
Marie also spoke with a trio of local World War II veterans, Hector Tony Page, Francis Lamoureux, and Wilfred Dalude. They were among the 2,500 Franco-Americans from Chicopee who answered the call to serve. Marie's father was a vet.
All the men left for war. So, you know, it was a very difficult time for the families. It's important to remember them and, you know, what they did for us.
In addition, Marie's mother Edna, her sister Jean, and her brother-in-law Romeo were interviewed. Although Prue Meter was unable to ultimately find a permanent site for the French Heritage Center, she continues to support French culture across New England. Last year, with her sister, Marie helped establish an annual French Day in Chicopee surrounding St. John Baptiste Day. The Quebec flag was raised to acknowledge and support French contributions to the city. Prue Meter also wants to construct a monument dedicated to the French-Canadian immigrants who worked the mills and built the beautiful French churches. She wants its final resting place to be in Aldenville, which the French called Petite Canada.
Mr. Alden, who came and bought like 600 acres of land, built up the houses, and then he advertised, you know, in English and French for all the factory workers and, you know, all the mills, and said, oh, come live in Aldenville.
In addition to her mother's wedding dress, Marie has some other prized heirlooms.
It's a locket that my grandmother gave me, my meme, and then I have my mother's St. Anne medal from the St. Anne Sodality at Assumption. I think she was in that for 50 years. I also have my grandmother's it's a little button with her image on it.
Another cherished possession which inspired Marie's career as a piano instructor also came from her grandmother, a 100-year-old mandolin.
My meme played the mandolin, and so she gave this to me when I was in college, and I actually went after college and took lessons on it.
Marie's thankful for all the Franco-Americans she spoke to for their accomplishments, contributions,
and most especially for their indomitable joie de vivre spirit, which lives on in all of us who are proud to say, I am French Canadian.
For Real to Real, I'm Steve Kiltonick.
If you're interested in buying a copy of Growing Up French, you can reach Marie via email at frenchconnection104@gmail.com or by calling 413-592-4946. And we have that information also on iobserve.org.